look at this time frame is because let us not ever forget, that the sources of the very foundational beginnings of the Bible and how many billions of people are into the Bible, I don't know, it's more than I can count, is Moses, or said to be Moses. So you have all of these people that are familiar with this, just like in this time of 2016, who is not familiar with Star Wars? Come on, please, don't be ridiculous. And who is not familiar with, hey, forget about it, the mafiosi, yeah, we're all familiar with that stuff. This is relevant to today. Well, you know, there's also a relevance to Moses. There's also a relevance to the Bible. And this guy wrote the first book, the first 5 books of the Bible. And as we're going to see, the Bible became this ginormous thing. That's currently ginormous. I know that's a word I got. That's a word I got on some TV show. But hey, it kind of fits, you know what I mean? Yeah. Now, using the Bible itself, which, you know, like I say, has billions of people, as a reference, or as, okay, here's a source to see these stories, we see the Egyptian Empire very clearly as, hey, this is a real place and it's a real empire. They have gods and all that stuff, and they're a conquering place. They're one of the conquerors, okay, that the story is about. They have their institutions set up. They have all this stuff set up. And we first see the Egyptian Empire in the story of Abraham. That's how far it goes back. You know, Abraham was that guy. His dad was a high priest in Ur of the Chaldees. That's in Mesopotamia. So he was born into this idea of the deities, the gods, and all this stuff. So I don't think it was a big stretch for Yahweh, in other words, Jehovah, or the Lord, if we're going to look at it and couch it in, okay, this is the King James Version, or this is the English version, they just call it Lord, which is basically Yod-Heh-Voh-Heh. It's not that big of a stretch to think, okay, the Lord, because we're sort of raised in the Bible in this culture and many cultures around the world. It's not that big of a stretch to say that the Lord, or see that the Lord is going to say, you know, this guy's already kind of pre-trained in this deal because his dad is a high priest to this temple of their god, whatever their god was at that particular time. And that was the Sumer civilization, by the way. Rather important to the story and to keep it in line with history. So we see Abraham taking his family and his hot chick wife, and they're going off to live in the middle of nowhere, and he ends up in this place. Well, in the story, part of the story, we see the Egyptian Empire because he goes and travels into the Egyptian Empire, and then you know that story. You probably heard of, I don't know how many sermons I've heard on it. Maybe you don't listen to sermons, but the story it's everywhere. You can look it up online. It's probably in a movie somewhere. Watch a movie on Abraham sometime. It's interesting stuff. But the Pharaoh says, hey man, that girl's pretty hot, and I think we're going to escort her up to my place for some late night entertainment. Yeah. And the whole time Abraham's lying and saying, no dude, check it out, that's my sister, that's not my wife, because he's like scared they're gonna kill him. This is kind of deviating from the story because This is moving kind of slowly, but my point with this is that here is the Egyptian Empire. And you can see all the movies. They're everywhere. Please, if you want more reference on this, see anything on Egypt. It's mind-blowing stuff. But the point I'm making with these four characters in the Bible, and that would be Abraham, and then Joseph, and then Moses, and then even Jesus Christ as a little kid ends up in Egypt. And I did a little research on that, like what town they were living in, and it wasn't that far from actually where the Great Pyramids are sitting today, which I thought, this is kind of amazing. Anyway, so we see the Egyptian Empire as one of these conquering empires, these kind of conquering people. And we see an amazing thing in this story with Abraham, and that is one of the gods, while the emperor is napping before his big night with the hot little chick, Sarah, the god's warning him, hey, dude, do not do this, man. This is not going to be cool. So I think that was one of the gods saying to him, and this is my opinion, I think that was one of the gods saying to him, hey man, you are screwing with some big time power, and so we don't get knocked off our course because I'm a god and I'm telling you this is uncool what you're going to do. Don't do it. Don't do it. Now wake up and go make this reality happen. You see this story in the Bible. Then the next time we see the Egyptian Empire, and of course we're going through history like super bullet speed fast, we see Joseph. The slave trade is already a reality. This is already the planet Earth with the slave trade. And when I get to Moses, I'm going to show you something very important about planetary system reality. But the slave trade's already a reality, and why do we know that? If we're looking at the Bible as a source, of course we know it through history, but now we're looking at the Bible as a source because Joseph's brothers are like, you're a douche, and they don't like him. So they sell him. They friggin' sell the guy. They're like, we're throwing you in a pit and we're going to sell you to the slavers. Yes! Get rid of you once and for all, you douche. So they sell him. And then he goes into the Egyptian system as this young kid. And he starts learning the Egyptian system, but the whole time he's tied to this Yahweh, Lord thing. God. Like, sort of like creator God. And you'll have to read the story. I don't want this to become religion, but I can't help but point this out to you because it's part of the story. And there's a lot in the story, so I need to point this out to you. The next time we see one of these great empires, the Egyptian Empire that we're talking about, we see Moses and the people that Joseph bargained to save, which was, Isaac and the just watch the movie or read the story, whatever. I'm sure you're already familiar with it. I mean, I grew up with it. You probably did too. But the next thing you see is Moses is living in the land of Goshen. He's this kid that's born, and then who hasn't seen the Ten Commandments? We've all seen the Ten Commandments. They throw this kid, his mom throws a kid into the river in this basket because the Pharaoh is like, okay, we're going to have to kill all of these little Hebrew kids. No more Hebrew kids between these ages because there's too many of them and we're considering a threat. Their whole ideas are weird and they're not following our program correctly, so we're I'm getting words from the gods that this is going to be a problem for me, so I'm just going to knock this problem out right now. So we're just going to kill all these Hebrew kids, these little babies. Actually, they're little babies is what they are. They're killing the babies. So that's how Moses ends up in the river, and like I said, we've all seen the movie. And then Moses grows up in the pyramid religion and becomes under the family of the Pharaoh's family, becomes a high priest. Let us never forget this. This is the stuff they never tell you in a sermon, because they want you to think a certain way, because you got to remember, these people are seminary trained and there's a lot of ideology wrapped up in it. But let's cut to the quick, shall we? He's raised up in that, and obviously was very important, because he didn't just decide these things for himself. He was just sort of thrown into that fate, thrown into that destiny by God. Was orchestrating his life. So it was obviously important. And it was obviously important that Joseph, earlier, way before him, hundreds of years before him, Joseph is thrown into the same system. Very important stuff. What's so important about that? But it is important. And it does have to do with the way we think. Not we, per se, but the way the thinking was at that time.